The smell of horse manure filled the room when my son, Peter, answered my call. Through the speakerphone, I could hear his nervous chuckle as he explained to his in-laws that his troubled mother was on the line. I smiled, hearing his wife's shouts when she found the special gift, Lightning, my favorite horse, had left on top of her Louis Vuitton suitcase. I never thought that at 65 years old, I'd become an expert in rural revenge, but my son left me no choice. Before I continue, make sure you've already subscribed to this channel and leave a comment telling me where you're watching this video from. We love to see how far our stories travel. It all started 3 days ago. I was living peacefully on the ranch that I had built with my late husband, Anthony. After 30 years of working as a nurse in Dallas, Texas, I finally retired and moved to our 100-acre property in rural Montana, our dream made real. Anthony had passed away a year and a half prior, after a long battle with cancer. He didn't get to enjoy retirement for long, but he made me promise that I would live life to the fullest for the both of us. The ranch was my sanctuary. I woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning to take care of the animals. 3 horses, 12 hens, and 1 hot-tempered rooster named Devil, a name Anthony gave him, claiming the bird had a devil inside of him. My days were filled with tending to the garden, reading on the porch, and occasional visits from the neighbors. It was a simple life, but a deeply satisfying one. Until the phone call that Tuesday. "Mum, we have some news." Peter's voice sounded upbeat over the phone. My heart warmed. It had been nearly 6 months since I'd seen my only son. "Hello, dear. So good to hear from you. Is everything okay?" "Better than okay. Mary and I are coming to visit you at the ranch. We'll be there on Friday." "That's wonderful," I replied, genuinely happy. "I'll get the guest room ready and prepare that." "Actually," he interrupted me, "it won't just be the 2 of us. Mary's parents are coming, and her 2 sisters, and their husbands. Oh, and the cousins from Denver." My stomach clenched. "How many people, Peter?" 10 in all, but don't worry. You've got plenty of space in that giant house." I took a deep breath. The main house had 4 bedrooms, 2 of which were practically storage rooms now. I'd have to reorganize everything in less than 3 days. "Son, I don't know if I can get everything ready for so many people that quickly. The extra bedrooms are full of—" "Well, empty them," he cut me off. His voice changed to a condescending tone he had adopted since becoming a marketing manager at a multinational corporation. "What's the problem? What else do you have to do there besides feed chickens? We'll need the best rooms, of course. Mary's parents will stay in your master bedroom." "My bedroom? But where will I sleep? The couch in the living room will do. It's just for a weekend. Dad would love to see the family all together at that ranch. That's why he bought the place, right? For family get-togethers." The manipulation was so obvious, I almost laughed. How dare he invoke the memory of Anthony to justify this invasion? Anthony, who valued respect and consideration above all else. "Peter, your father would never kick me out of my own room to accommodate visitors I don't even know." "Mum, it's all decided. Mary already posted about it on Instagram. Her followers are excited to see the authentic country experience. If you can't deal with this, maybe you should consider moving back to the city. A woman your age, all alone on a ranch, frankly. It's not very practical." Before I could answer, he delivered the final blow. "If you don't like it, you can sleep in the barn with the horses. They seem to be your only concern anyway. We'll be there Friday evening." The phone went dead. He had hung up on me. I stood motionless in the kitchen, feeling the weight of his arrogance and thoughtlessness. The hurt transformed into indignation, and the indignation into something more creative. That's when Lightning whinnied from the stable, as if he sensed my distress. I looked at him through the window, his 1,200 pounds of gleaming black attitude, and something clicked in my mind. A smile spread across my face. You know what, Lightning? I murmured. I think you're right. They want the authentic country experience. We'll give them the authentic country experience. I spent that afternoon in Anthony's office, making calls. First to George and Michael, my helpers who lived in the small house near the creek and had been looking after the property for over 10 years. They understood exactly what I wanted to do. Ms. Clara, George said when I explained my plan, his sun-weathered face breaking into a mischievous grin. It would be my absolute pleasure. Then I called my best friend Lucy, who lived in Denver. Pack a bag, dear, she said immediately. The Imperial Spa of the Rocky Mountains has a special this week. We'll watch the whole show from there. The next 2 days were a whirlwind of meticulously planned preparations. I removed all the quality bed linens from the rooms, replacing the Egyptian cotton with rough blankets from the barn's emergency supplies. The good towels went to the cellar, replaced by others that felt like sandpaper. I adjusted the thermostat in the guest wing to be chilly at night and during the day. Temperature control issues, I would claim. Old ranch houses, you know. But the piece de resistance required precise timing. Thursday night, as I installed the last of the small cameras, it's amazing what you can get with next-day delivery from Amazon. I stood in the living room, visualizing the scene. The Persian rugs I paid a fortune for, the restored antique furniture, the windows with their mountain view. This is going to be perfect, I whispered to Anthony's photo on the mantel. You always said Peter needed to learn about consequences. Before I left for Denver on Friday morning, George and Michael helped me with the finishing touches. We led lightning, star, and thunder inside the house. They were surprisingly cooperative, probably sensing the mischief in the air. A bucket of oats in the kitchen, some hay in the living room, and nature would take its course. The internet modem went into the safe. The swimming pool gained a new ecosystem of algae I'd been growing in buckets for days. The local pet store was happy to contribute a few dozen tadpoles and noisy frogs. As I drove away from my ranch at sunrise, my tablet already displaying the camera feeds, I felt lighter than I had in years. Behind me, Lightning was inspecting the living room couch. Ahead of me was Denver, Lucy, and a front row seat to the show of a lifetime. The authentic country life Peter so wanted to show his wife's family was just beginning. The hotel in Denver was the complete opposite of what my son expected me to be living that weekend. As Lucy and I settled into a luxury suite, with room service and perfectly tuned air conditioning, I watched the convoy of cars arriving at my property on the tablet. "Look at your daughter-in-law's clothes," Lucy commented, pointing at the screen where Mary was getting out of the car. "Are those Louboutins at the ranch?" I nodded, watching my daughter-in-law totter across the gravel in her 4-inch heels. $10,000 about to meet authentic Montana mud. The parade of cars was impressive. 2 luxury SUVs and a convertible Mercedes bringing Mary's parents. All immaculate city vehicles about to face their worst nightmare. I counted the people through the cameras. Mary's sisters, Helen and Amy, their husbands, Charles and Robert, the cousins from Denver, Philip and Julia, and her parents, Scott and Rachel, who got out of the Mercedes wearing all white outfits. White clothes at a ranch. Urban naivete knew no bounds. "Clara, you are absolutely brilliant," Lucy whispered as we watched them approach the front door. Peter struggled with the spare key I had told him about, the one under the ceramic toad that Anthony had made in his artistic phase. For a moment, I felt a pang of nostalgia, but then I heard Mary's voice on the external camera's audio. "Oh my gosh, what a stench! How does your mother stand living here?" The nostalgia evaporated instantly. Peter opened the door, and the magic began. The scream that erupted from Mary could have been heard for miles. Lightning was strategically positioned in the doorway, majestically swishing his tail as he deposited a fresh pile of manure on my Persian rug. But it was Star, standing in the living room as if she owned the place, calmly chewing on a Hermes scarf that had fallen from Mary's luggage, who really completed the scene. "What the heck is this?" Peter's professional composure vanished in an instant. Thunder chose that moment to enter from the kitchen, knocking over the ceramic vase that Anthony had made for our anniversary. I watched the vase shatter on the hardwood floor through the camera, but I felt no remorse. Things are just things. What was happening there was priceless. "Should they really be in here?" Helen suggested timidly, pressing herself against the wall as Thunder investigated her designer handbag with his large nose. "Horses don't belong in houses," Rachel shouted, her white linen already sporting suspicious brown stains from brushing against the wall where Lightning had been rubbing himself all morning. Peter grabbed his phone, frantically calling me. I let it ring 3 times before answering, making my voice sound breathless. "Hello, son. Did you arrive safely?" "Mum, there are horses in the house." "What?" I gasped, clutching my chest dramatically, even though he couldn't see me. Lucy had to cover her mouth to keep from laughing. "That's impossible. They must have escaped from the pasture." "Oh my goodness. George and Michael are visiting family in Salt Lake City this weekend. You're going to have to get them out yourself. How am I supposed to—" "Mum, they're destroying everything." "Just lead them outside, dear. There are halters and ropes in the barn. They're as gentle as kittens. I'm so sorry, but I'm in Denver for a doctor's appointment. My arthritis, you know. I'll be back Sunday evening." "Sunday? Mum, you can't." "Oh, the doctor's calling me. I love you." I hung up and put my phone on airplane mode. Lucy and I toasted with champagne as we watched the chaos unfold. The next 3 hours were better than any reality TV show. Robert, trying to be a hero, grabbed Lightning's mane to lead him outside. The horse, offended by the familiarity, promptly sneezed all over his Armani shirt. Charles tried to shoo Star away with a broom, but she interpreted it as a game and chased him around the coffee table until he scrambled onto the couch, screaming like a little boy. But the climax of the afternoon came when Philip discovered the pool. "At least we can go for a swim," he announced, already taking off his shirt as he headed for the patio doors. Lucy and I leaned forward in anticipation. The scream when he saw the frog-infested swamp that had been my pristine pool was so high-pitched that Thunder inside the house whinnied in response. The frogs were in full vocal activity, creating a symphony that would make Beethoven cry. The smell, I imagined, was spectacular. "This is insane," Julia lamented, trying to find a cell signal while dodging horse droppings. "There's no Wi-Fi, no phone signal. How are we going to— There's horse crap in my bag." Meanwhile, Mary had locked herself in the downstairs bathroom, sobbing dramatically, while Peter pounded on the door, begging her to come out and help him. Rachel was on the phone, pacing in circles in the entryway, apparently trying to book hotel rooms. "Good luck with that," I murmured, knowing that the nearest decent hotel was 2 hours away, and there was a rodeo festival in town this weekend. Everything would be booked. When the sun began to set, the family managed to corner the horses on the back patio, but couldn't figure out how to get them down the steps and back to the pasture. The animals, intelligent creatures that they were, had discovered the outdoor furniture cushions and were having a grand old time tearing them to shreds. Helen and Amy had holed up in one of the guest rooms, but I knew what was coming next. The thermostat had kicked in, dropping the temperature to the programmed level. Sure enough, within an hour, they emerged wrapped in the rough blankets, complaining about the cold. "There are no extra blankets anywhere," Amy whimpered, "and these smell like a wet dog." That was because they were dog blankets from the local animal shelter donation box. I had washed them, of course, most of them. By 9 o'clock in the evening, they had given up on dinner. The horses had managed to get back into the kitchen and eaten most of the groceries they had brought. Mary's sophisticated cheese board was now Lightning's dinner, and the organic vegetables from the grocery store were scattered across the floor like confetti. Peter found the emergency supplies in the pantry: canned beans, instant oatmeal, and powdered milk. The same supplies I had lived on for a week when we first moved to the ranch, and a storm isolated us from town. To this group, however, it might as well have been prison food. "I can't believe your mother lives like this," Rachel said, loud enough for the kitchen camera to pick it up clearly. "It's no wonder Anthony died. He probably wanted to escape this hell." I felt Lucy's hand squeeze mine. She knew how much Anthony had loved this dream, how he had sketched drawings of the ranch on napkins during chemotherapy sessions, making me promise to live our dream even if he couldn't. "That witch," Lucy murmured. "Want me to call her restaurant and cancel her reservations for the next month? I know people." I laughed. I actually laughed for the first time in days. "No, dear. The horses are taking care of that beautifully." As if on divine command, Thunder appeared in the background of the kitchen feed, tail raised, depositing his opinion of Rachel directly behind her white designer sneakers. When she took a step back, the squish of something wet being stepped on was perfectly audible over the tablet speakers. The screaming started all over again. By midnight, everyone had retreated to their designated rooms. The cameras showed them huddled under inadequate blankets, still in their clothes, because their luggage was damaged by the horses, or still in the cars, too afraid to go out and get it. The automatic rooster alarm I had installed in the attic was set for 4:30 o'clock in the morning. The speakers were military grade, used for training exercises. Michael had gotten them from a friend who worked in the army. "Should we order more champagne?" Lucy asked, already consulting the room service menu. "Absolutely," I replied, watching Peter pace back and forth in his room, gesturing furiously as he argued with Mary in angry whispers. "And maybe some of those chocolate-covered strawberries. We're going to need our energy for tomorrow's show." Through the cameras, I saw Peter pick up his laptop, probably trying to find hotels or figure out how to call a large animal removal service. But without Wi-Fi, that expensive MacBook was just a very nice paperweight. I smiled, thinking of the note I had left in the kitchen, hidden under the coffee maker they would inevitably find in the morning. "Welcome to the authentic country life. Remember, early to bed, early to rise. The rooster crows at 4:30 o'clock in the morning. Feeding time is at 5 o'clock in the morning. Enjoy your stay, Mum." The next day, they would discover the chore chart I had prepared, complete with cleaning stables, collecting eggs from my extremely territorial hens, and repairing the fence I had strategically weakened near the pig pen on the Olvera family farm. Neighbors who had extremely curious and skilled escape artist pigs. That night, while my son was learning what his father always knew, that respect is not inherited, it is earned. I would sleep in a luxury he could never imagine I would enjoy. The rooster's awakening erupted at 4:30 o'clock in the morning with the intensity of 1,000 suns. On the tablet screen, I watched Peter leap out of bed, tangled in the rough blanket, his hair defying gravity. The sound was magnificent. Not just one rooster, but a full symphony I had mixed, amplified to concert levels. "What the heck is that?" Mary shouted from under her pillow. Lucy had stayed the night in my suite, and we were already on our second pot of coffee, with fresh fruit arranged between us as if we were watching a championship final. "Is that the real volume?" Lucy asked, wincing as she heard Rachel's scream join the chorus coming from the room next door. "Oh no," I said sweetly, adjusting my reading glasses. "I turned it up just a little bit. You know, my hearing isn't what it used to be. I need it to be loud to wake me up." The system was designed for persistence. Every time someone thought it was over, another rooster crowed. I had programmed it to continue for exactly 37 minutes, with random intervals, long enough to ensure no one would get back to sleep. At 5 o'clock in the morning, the exhausted group stumbled into the kitchen, looking like extras from a zombie movie. Amy's hair extensions were a tangled mess. Charles still had horse manure on his designer jeans. Philip had given up completely and was wearing one of the rough blankets like a cape. Peter found my note under the coffee maker. His face as he read it was a masterpiece of evolving horror. "Feeding time," Robert read over his shoulder. "What feeding?" That's when they heard the sounds coming from outside. My automatic feeders had failed to dispense food. I had disabled them remotely, which meant that 12 hens, the rooster devil, 3 pigs from the Olvera family, who had mysteriously found their way through the weakened fence overnight, and my 3 horses were all congregating near the house, expressing their discontent. The hens were the noisiest. I had specifically selected the most bad-tempered breeds, including Devil, who had won 3 competitions for the most aggressive bird in the county. "We're not farmers," Helen lamented, yesterday's mascara streaking down her cheeks. "This is insane." "Just ignore them," Mary ordered, trying to maintain some authority. "We'll go into town for breakfast." The GPS on Peter's phone reported that town was 40 minutes away. "Just one way." "I found instant coffee," Julia announced, holding up the can of decaf I had left in a prominent spot. They wouldn't find the real coffee I had hidden behind the cans of corn. As they struggled with the old coffee maker I had replaced for my espresso machine, which was carefully stored in the guest room that now served as a storage space, the animals grew louder. Lightning discovered he could bang on the porch with his hoof, creating a rhythmic boom that resonated throughout the property. The pigs had found the patio furniture and were enthusiastically redesigning the outdoor area. But Devil, he had discovered that he could fly high enough to land on the kitchen windowsill. The face-to-face encounter between Mary and Devil through the glass was cinematic. She screamed. He squawked back. She threw the instant coffee at the window. He pecked at the glass with increasing vigor. "We have to feed them to make them stop," Peter finally admitted, already looking defeated. "And it wasn't even 6 o'clock in the morning yet." "You all feed those things," Rachel announced, imperiously settling into a kitchen chair that immediately wobbled. I had loosened one of the legs just enough to be irritating but not dangerous. "Your mother's right," Mary said. "You and the other guys handle this." I watched Peter's jaw clench. Anthony would have already been outside, animals fed, probably riding thunder across the pasture. My husband had grown up on a homestead in rural Montana, something Peter had always been embarrassed about, preferring to tell people his father was an agricultural consultant. The men ventured outside as if they were entering a war zone. On the external cameras, I watched Charles immediately step into a fresh pile of manure. Robert Dumjabbert tried to open the feed shed, but jumped back, screaming as several mice scurried out. They had moved in after I forgot to store the feed correctly a few days earlier. But the best moment came when Philip approached the chicken coop with the feed bucket. Devil, defender of his territory, launched himself at the poor guy with the fury of a feathered missile. The bucket went flying, feed scattered everywhere. And suddenly it was total chaos. Chickens running in all directions, pigs stampeding from the patio, and the horses trotting over to investigate the commotion. Peter tried to maintain order, shouting commands as if he were still in his corporate meeting room in Dallas. But farm animals don't respond to corporate strategies. Thunder, in particular, seemed to take offense at Peter's tone, and expressed his displeasure by knocking him directly into the water trough. Inside the house, the women weren't faring any better. The kitchen sink had developed a mysterious leak, courtesy of Michael. The stove took forever to heat up. I had adjusted the gas flow, and every drawer they opened seemed to contain something unexpected. Mouse traps, rubber snakes, to scare away the real snakes, of course, or my collection of veterinary supplies, including huge syringes for horse vaccinations. "There's something wrong with these eggs," Amy shouted, holding up a green one. "They're rotten." I laughed so hard that Lucy had to pause the video to calm me down. My Araucana hens laid the most beautiful blue and green eggs, but city folk always thought there was something wrong with them. By 7 o'clock in the morning, they managed to produce what could charitably be called breakfast: burnt instant oatmeal, eggs that Rachel refused to touch, and instant decaf coffee that tasted like frustrated dreams. The milk was powdered because the fresh milk in the fridge had mysteriously gone sour. I had adjusted the refrigerator's temperature before I left. "I need a shower," Mary announced. "A long, hot shower." Oh, sweet illusion. The guest bathroom shower had two settings: Arctic water or the surface of the sun. The pressure alternated between a spray capable of stripping paint or just an insufficient trickle, with no in-between. I had also replaced all the soft towels with camping ones that absorbed water about as well as wax paper. Mary's screams when she found the icy water were audible all the way in the kitchen. Then the hot water kicked in and the screams went up an octave. Helen tried the other bathroom and discovered the drain was slow. Hairs from the horses' tails that George had carefully placed caused the shower to overflow quickly. Meanwhile, Peter was desperately trying to get online. He found the router, turned it on, but couldn't figure out why it wasn't working. He couldn't see that I had changed the password to a 47-character random sequence and hidden the paper with the password inside the stable, specifically in the middle of the hay bales in the attic. "Maybe there's Wi-Fi in town," Charles suggested hopefully. "I'm not driving 40 minutes just to get online," Peter replied. The stress was clearly getting to him. Perfect. That's when they discovered the next phase of my plan. The chore chart in the laundry room that I had titled Daily Ranch Responsibilities in Anthony's handwriting, which I had carefully imitated. It was laminated and looked official, as if it had been there for years. Clean stable, 8 o'clock. Collect eggs, 8:30, use protection. Check fences, 9 o'clock. Move irrigation pipes, 10 o'clock. Feed chickens, again, 11 o'clock. Special diet. Clean pool filters, midday. Clean pool. Robert perked up. Maybe this won't be as bad as it looked yesterday. Sweet, naive Robert. The pool in the daylight was even worse. The algae had proliferated overnight, turning the water into a green carpet. The frogs had invited friends. Something that might have been a small alligator, but was probably just a log, floated menacingly in the deep end. The smell, I imagined, was spectacular. "We are not doing this," Rachel declared firmly. "This is not what we came here for." "What did you come here for, then?" I murmured to the screen, although she couldn't hear me. "For the free vacation, for the Instagram photos, to inspect my property." Lucy poured more champagne. We had switched from coffee as we watched them argue heatedly. Mary wanted to leave immediately. Peter insisted they couldn't abandon the animals. The cousins were already packing their bags. Charles was searching on his phone for, "Can you get sick from horse manure?" using the minimal signal he could get, standing on one foot near the chicken coop. Then came the moment I had been waiting for. Peter, frustrated and desperate, went to my bedroom to look for anything that could help. A different internet password, contact info for George and Michael, any salvation. That's when he found the envelope on my dresser, addressed to him in my handwriting. Inside was a single sheet of paper with one paragraph. "Peter, when you read this, you will have experienced about 1% of what it's really like to run a ranch. Your father did this every day for the last 2 years of his life, even through chemotherapy, because he loved this place. This wasn't just my dream. It was ours. If you can't respect that, if you can't respect me, then you don't belong here. The horses know it. The chickens know it. Even the frogs in the pool know it. Do you?" Below, I had put a photo Anthony had taken a month before he died. He was on Thunder, wearing his worn cowboy hat, smiling as if he had won the lottery. In the background, barely visible, was me, mucking out stables in rubber boots and his old flannel shirt, laughing at something he had said. We had been so happy here, so complete. On the camera, I watched my son sink onto my bed, the letter in his hand, his face going through emotions I hadn't seen since Anthony's funeral. Shame, recognition, maybe even understanding. But then, Mary's voice interrupted the moment. "Peter, there's something wrong with the toilet. It keeps making a noise." The spell was broken. He folded the letter, put it in his pocket, and went to deal with the mysteriously out-of-whack toilet. A simple valve adjustment that would take 5 seconds for someone who knew what they were doing, and hours for someone who didn't. We ordered lunch at the hotel. I had the grilled salmon. Lucy had the filet mignon. My cell phone showed 17 missed calls from Peter, 23 from Mary, and a text from Rachel that just said, "This is elder abuse." Elder abuse. I laughed so hard the waiter came to check if we were okay. The sun was setting on their first full day at the ranch. On the cameras, I could see them gathered in the living room, exhausted, dirty, and defeated. They managed to feed the animals, poorly, collect some eggs, losing 3 to Devil's Fury, and Charles had fallen into the pool while trying to scoop out the algae. Now they were eating canned beans and old crackers for dinner, because no one wanted to drive to town. And the horses had gotten into the kitchen again while they were outside, eating everything else edible. "One more day," I said to Lucy, raising my glass. "One more day and they will be completely broken." "You're wicked," she said admiringly. "Absolutely wicked." "No," I corrected, thinking of Anthony, of everything we had built, of all the dreams Peter wanted to destroy. "I'm just a rancher protecting her land." Sunday dawned with biblical precision. At 3:47 o'clock in the morning, the Olvera family pigs discovered that the hole in the fence had mysteriously gotten bigger overnight, thanks to George's late-night work. The 3 pigs, led by a massive sow named Gertie, made their way onto my property and discovered the final treasure, Scott's Mercedes, with the windows slightly open for ventilation. The car alarm at 4 o'clock in the morning was spectacular. On the camera, I watched Peter stumble outside in his ridiculous city shorts and slippers, trying to evict 2 pigs from the back seat. Gertie had settled into the driver's seat and was enthusiastically chewing on what looked like Rachel's leather handbag. "This can't be happening," he repeated like a mantra. But oh, it was. The rooster recording joined the symphony at 4:30 o'clock in the morning, right on schedule. This time I had added some peacock screams to the mix. The sound was so unholy that Robert literally fell out of bed, taking the rough blanket and a table lamp with him. When they all gathered in the kitchen at 5 o'clock in the morning, they looked like survivors of some apocalyptic disaster. Rachel's white linen had been abandoned for what looked like her husband's golf clothes from a decade ago. Helen was wearing a horse blanket as a dress. Philip had completely given up on dignity and was shirtless, despite the morning chill. "We're leaving," Mary announced. "Today. Now." "The car," Peter began. "I don't care about the car. Call a rental company." That's when they discovered that the nearest rental car company was at the regional airport, 2 hours away, and was all booked up due to the rodeo festival. The only local taxi company was a car driven by an old man, Mr. Henderson, who was visiting his daughter in Denver. "We could call an Uber," Amy suggested hopefully. The looks she received could have curdled milk. Uber at a homestead in rural Montana, 40 minutes from the nearest city, with no cell service to even place the order. "I found real coffee," Robert announced triumphantly, holding up the can of coffee I had hidden. It was the first genuine smile I saw on any of them. They were so focused on the coffee that no one questioned why Robert was looking behind cans of corn that had expired years ago. As they waited for the old coffee maker to work its magic, a new sound joined the morning chorus. Thunder had learned how to open the stable door, not by forcing it, but by literally using the latch with his teeth. Now he was leading Star and Lightning in what could only be described as a victory parade around the house. "How are they so smart?" Julia lamented, watching the horses through the window. "They're ranch horses," I said to my tablet screen, toasting them with my mimosa. "They learn from the best. That's when nature called." Literally. The septic system, which I had had serviced right before I left, but had told Peter was having problems lately, chose that moment to fail. Just enough to make the downstairs bathroom unusable and create a smell that sent everyone fleeing to the porch where Devil was waiting. The rooster had apparently decided the porch was his new kingdom. He had set himself up in the rocking chair and was defending his territory with the passion of a medieval knight. Charles tried to reason with him. "You can't reason with a rooster." Devil lunged, wings spread and spurs ready. Charles's retreat broke speed records. "We need help," Peter finally admitted, grabbing his phone to try and call me again. This time I answered on the first ring, my voice as cheerful as Christmas morning. "Hello, son. How's the ranch?" "Mum, we need you to come back. It's falling apart." "Oh dear, what's wrong?" He began listing the disasters, his voice becoming more frantic with each item. I made appropriate noises of concern, while Lucy filmed me on her cell phone for posterity. "Well," I said, when he finally ran out of breath, "George and Michael should be back on Monday. They'll know what to do. In the meantime, there's a manual in the barn for all the equipment and systems. Your father wrote it all down." That was true. Anthony had meticulously documented everything about the ranch. The manual was 300 pages long, laminated, and was currently stored in the attic under approximately 1,000 pounds of hay. Good luck finding it. "Monday? Mum, we can't. Oh, the doctor's calling me. The arthritis specialist. I have to go." I hung up and put my phone on airplane mode again. Through the cameras, I watched Peter throw his phone against the porch wall. It bounced and landed in a fresh pile of pig manure. The day progressed like a symphony of chaos. They tried to do laundry, but I had only left the eco-friendly detergent that required precise measurements and hot water, which the guest wing didn't have consistently. Helen's white dress came out a splotchy grey. Amy's silk blouse dissolved completely. They tried to drive to town for supplies, but discovered that Peter's car had a flat tire. A roofing nail had accidentally fallen near his parking spot. Scott's Mercedes still had pigs in it. Gertie had claimed it as her new home, and the rented SUVs were mysteriously locked with the keys inside, a mystery that would have been solved if they had noticed the curious vulture who learned to grab shiny objects. By noon, the temperature in the guest rooms had risen to the programmed level. Without proper ventilation, I had sealed the attic vents. It was like a sauna. They opened the windows, which let in the flies that had been attracted by all the animal activity. "There's food in the freezer," Charles announced, pulling out what looked like a roast. What he didn't know was that it was wild boar from last year's hunting season, labelled simply as meat in Anthony's handwriting. They thawed it in the microwave, turning it into rubber. The smell alone could have been classified as a chemical weapon. Lunch turned into crackers and the green eggs no one wanted to eat. Meanwhile, outside, the animals had organised into what looked like a protest. The horses were at the kitchen window, looking in accusingly. The hens had discovered they could jump onto the porch roof and were pecking at the upstairs bedroom windows. The pigs had moved on from the Mercedes to explore Peter's car, and an ambitious piglet had somehow gotten into the engine compartment. "This is insane," Rachel repeated, fanning herself with a paper plate. "Absolutely insane." Then came the rain. Summer storms in the countryside don't mess around. This one arrived at 2 o'clock in the afternoon with thunder that shook the house. The rain came horizontally, finding all the cracks in the windows that I had strategically left unsealed. Within minutes, the guest rooms were soaked. But the real discovery came when they tried to close the windows. The old wooden frames, which I had meant to fix, but conveniently forgot to mention, had swollen with the humidity. They were stuck open. Philip and Charles tried to force them, but only succeeded in breaking one completely, leaving an opening that the rain happily explored. "We need towels," Mary shouted. The camping towels weren't going to be much help. They used the rough blankets, their clothes, anything absorbent to try and stem the water. Meanwhile, the roof in the laundry room, which had that small leak I had noticed but not mentioned, transformed into a waterfall. The chore chart I had laminated so carefully floated like a little raft of responsibility. The storm passed after an hour, leaving everything damp and smelling of wet wool. The power flickered and went out. My backup generator, which would have turned on automatically, was mysteriously out of fuel. I had asked George to drain it. The manual start generator in the barn required reading a 16-page instruction manual in Spanish. I had swapped the manuals as a joke months ago, forgetting to switch them back. Serendipity. As night fell, they huddled in the living room with candles I had left. Trick birthday candles that relight themselves when you blow them out. Watching them try to figure out why the candles kept relighting was better than any TV show. "We could cook on the grill," Peter suggested, trying to salvage something from the day. The gas grill was empty. The charcoal grill required real knowledge of how to start and maintain a fire. They tried anyway, producing what could generously be called charred food. Even the vegetables were somehow burnt on the outside and raw on the inside. Dinner was canned beans again, cold this time, eaten by the flickering light of the trick candles, while rain dripped from several spots on the ceiling, and devil paced on the porch like a feathered sentry. "I want to go home," Julia said quietly. It was the first completely honest thing any of them had said. "This is Peter's home now," Rachel said acidly. "His inheritance, right, Peter? Is this what you wanted?" On the infrared camera, I saw my son's face. He looked broken. "Good. I just thought," he started. "You thought you'd take over your mother's retirement paradise," Mary finished. "Turn it into our vacation home. Maybe rent it out when we weren't here. You talked about it for months," Helen added. "How much money the property was worth. How you could subdivide it." "Subdivide it?" "My 100 acres. Our dream." Lucy squeezed my hand as we watched. "Are you okay?" "I'm perfect," I said. And it was true. At 9 o'clock in the evening, something magical happened. The clouds cleared, revealing a stunning Montana night sky. Thousands of stars, the Milky Way visible in all its glory. On the cameras, I watched the family venture onto the porch. Devil had finally retreated to the chicken coop. For a moment, they all stood in silence, looking at something most of them had never truly seen before. A sky without light pollution. Charles pointed out a constellation. Amy saw her first shooting star. Even Rachel seemed impressed by the majesty. "It's beautiful," Mary admitted in a low voice. "Dad loved this," Peter said suddenly. "He used to send me photos of the night sky from here. I always deleted them without looking." The confession hung in the air like another star. "He built this place for Mom," he continued. "Every fence, every garden bed. Even when he was sick, he was out here working. And I called it a waste of money." "You said worse things than that," Rachel reminded him. Because, of course, she would. The moment fell apart. They went back to their damp, dark rooms. On the night vision cameras, I watched them toss and turn in the uncomfortable beds. Too hot, then too cold. Rough blankets providing little comfort. At midnight, the coyotes started howling, not close enough to be dangerous, but loud enough to be heard clearly through the broken window. Then the owls joined in. Then Gertie, still in the Mercedes, discovered the horn. Sunday, one more day. Tomorrow they'd break completely, and I would return to reclaim my kingdom. But tonight, just for a moment, under those stars, Peter had remembered his father. That was more than I had hoped for, maybe more than he deserved. "Ready for the grand finale?" Lucy asked, checking the weather forecast on her cell phone. I looked at the forecast for Sunday. Clear skies and a high wind advisory. "Ah, yes," I said, raising my champagne glass to the screen where my son was sitting in the dark, finally understanding what he had tried to take away from me. "Let's end this with a bang." The best part, I hadn't even used my secret weapon yet. Tomorrow they'd meet the family of capybaras that used to visit the creek behind the property. Monday morning dawned with what the local weather service would later call a thermal anomaly. At 6 o'clock in the morning, it was already sweltering. At 7 o'clock in the morning, when the exhausted group stumbled into the kitchen after another rooster serenade, the temperature was soaring. "Why is it so hot?" Helen whimpered, fanning herself with a paper towel. "Because, my dear." I had turned off the central air conditioning before I left, leaving only the inadequate ceiling fans that ran on electricity, which they didn't have. The main fuse replacement was in Anthony's workshop, behind approximately 400 pounds of wood that I had asked George to stack there for future projects. On the tablet at the hotel, where Lucy and I were enjoying eggs Benedict and perfectly controlled air conditioning, I watched them discover that the fridge, without power for over 12 hours, had become a breeding ground for bacteria. The smell when Philip opened it sent everyone fleeing to the porch where the capybara family was waiting. I should explain the capybaras. They weren't exactly mine. They belonged to the creek and the riparian forest, but I fed them occasionally, and they had learned that humans meant food, and someone, definitely not George under my instructions, might have left a trail of fruit from the creek directly to the front porch. 6 capybaras, each weighing 130 pounds, plus some babies, docile and vegetarian animals, but extremely territorial when it came to food. And there was food scattered all over the porch, courtesy of the hens that had rummaged through the trash cans. Scott was the first to make eye contact with the alpha male. Fatal error. The animal moved forward, not exactly aggressive, but firmly determined to get what it considered its own. Scott backed away so quickly that he tripped over the rocking chair, falling on his back. The capybaras, interpreting the movement as an invitation to share the space, advanced onto the porch. The screaming started again. "What are those things?" Rachel shouted, scrambling onto a chair. "Capybaras," the tablet screen replied. "Totally harmless, most of the time. The thing about capybaras is that they are curious, extremely curious, and once they decide you are interesting, they follow you everywhere." The group retreated into the house, but the animals just stood at the windows, staring with their big, dark eyes, occasionally making their characteristic noises. Inside, the temperature kept rising. Without power, without air conditioning, and with the morning sun turning the windows into magnifying glasses, the house was becoming an oven. "We need ice," Charles declared, already sweating through his last clean shirt. The ice machine, of course, required electricity. The reserve ice in the stable freezer had melted when the power went out. The nearest store was 40 minutes away, and the car situation hadn't improved. That's when Robert discovered the well. "There's a hand pump," he announced triumphantly. "At least we can get some fresh water." What Robert didn't know was that the well pump hadn't been serviced in years. It technically worked, but the water came up rust-coloured and smelling of sulphur. They tried anyway. Amy threw up. Even the capybaras backed away from the smell. By midday, the temperature hit over 100 degrees. The metal roof was creaking with the expansion. The horses had found the only shade directly under the kitchen window and were contributing their own fragrance to the situation. "I'm calling 911, Rachel announced, holding up her phone. "And say what?" Peter retorted, his patience exhausted. "That it's hot and there are capybaras?" That's when Devil, stressed by the heat and furious with the world in general, discovered he could fly high enough to get in through the broken bedroom window. The sounds coming from upstairs were a mix of avian fury and human hysteria. Philip ran downstairs with scratches on his arms and feathers in his hand. "That bird attacked me! It attacked me while I was sleeping." Technically, no one was sleeping, but the drama was appreciated by all. The afternoon brought the wind. Countryside wind doesn't mess around. It came at 30 miles per hour and brought dust, leaves, and what I can only describe as rural debris. The broken window turned into a portal for dust and hay. Within minutes, everything was covered in a fine layer of authentic country. "We're leaving," Mary announced for the 100th time. "We'll walk to town, if we have to." "It's over 100 degrees, Peter reminded her. "It's more than 10 miles. We'll die of heat stroke." That's when they heard the trucks. 3 trucks coming up the driveway. Loud music, horns blaring. The rescue cavalry? No. It was the Olvera family coming for the Sunday barbecue. I had forgotten to mention I had committed to organizing weeks before. 12 people piled out of the trucks, carrying trays, beer coolers, and a battery-powered portable karaoke machine. Juan Olvera, all 250 pounds of him, grabbed Peter in a bear hug. "You must be Ms. Clara's son. She told us all about you. She said you were just dying to experience real country life. Don't worry. We brought everything. We even brought the mechanical bull in the back of the truck. Your mother said you wanted to learn to ride." Lucy and I nearly choked on our mimosas, watching Peter's face as they unloaded a real mechanical bull and set it up in the front yard. The capybaras were fascinated. The Olveras, bless their hearts, didn't mind the lack of power. They had generators on their trucks. They didn't mind the heat. They were real farmers. They didn't even mind the capybaras, although Juan's wife, Martha, commented, "I don't remember Ms. Clara mentioning capybaras." What followed were 3 hours of forced socializing. The Olveras were lovely people who assumed Peter's family was just as excited about country life as they were. They wanted to hear all about their plans for the property, their opinions on cattle breeding, their favorite cultivation techniques. Amy tried to explain she was from Denver. Juan's son, Johnny, who was actually bigger than his dad, interpreted that as an invitation to tell her about all the people he had already met in the city. A story that took 40 minutes and included family photos. Charles was forced onto the mechanical bull. He lasted 5 seconds before being launched into a pile of hay that the capybaras were using as a bathroom. The Olveras cheered as if he had won a championship. Rachel locked herself in the bathroom to cry, but Martha followed her in, assuming she needed a woman-to-woman chat about farm life. On the bathroom camera, I heard Martha giving detailed advice on calf birthing and the best way to clean chicken guts. The karaoke started at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Juan insisted everyone participate. Robert's performance of The Half Turn, while the capybaras sang along, was particularly memorable. Mary, forced to sing Why Is Life Useless to Me, seemed to be having a nervous breakdown, but the moment that completely broke Peter was when Johnny asked, "So when is your mother coming back?" "She promised to show me that new cheese-making method." "She's in Denver," Peter said weakly. "Medical issues." "Medical issues?" Juan shouted. "That woman is tougher than my prize-winning bull. I saw her last week carrying hay bales like they were pillows." "What kind of medical issues?" Peter couldn't answer, because that's when Gertie the sow, protector of her piglets, decided the mechanical bull was a threat. A 400-pound sow charging a mechanical bull while 12 farmers and 10 city people ran in a panic and capybaras watched with interest. It's something National Geographic documentaries should show. The Olveras finally left at sunset, but not before extracting promises to repeat the Sunday program and leaving the mechanical bull behind, because you all need to practice. The family sat amidst the wreckage of the yard as darkness fell. Without power, with no safe food to eat, covered in dust, sweat, and various animal fluids. "I want my mum," Peter said softly. It was such an infantile statement that even Mary looked at him with something approaching sympathy. "I want my mum," he repeated. "I need to apologize." On the camera, I watched him pull out the letter I had left, now wrinkled and stained. He read it again, this time out loud. When he got to the part about Anthony doing the work during chemotherapy, his voice failed. "We have to go," Rachel said. But for the first time, her voice had no venom. "In what car?" Peter laughed bitterly. "We're trapped just like Mum wanted." "Maybe," Charles said carefully. "She wanted you to understand something." "Understand what?" "That country life is hell. That it's work," Charles said. "Hard work every single day, and she's doing it alone now." Silence stretched. Even the capybaras had quieted down, silhouetted against the darkening sky. "I told her she should sell," Peter admitted. "The day after Dad's funeral at the reception. I pulled her aside, and I told her she was too old to take care of this place alone. I said Dad was selfish for wanting to die here. Even Rachel winced at that. I had a buyer lined up, a construction company. They would have paid 3 times what they paid." "You were trying to sell your mother's house?" Helen asked, shocked. "I thought I was helping. She's 65 years old, alone, doing all this." He gestured at the chaos around them. "I thought I was being practical." "You thought you were getting rich," Mary corrected. The truth hung in the air, like the dust that still swirled in the wind. That's when I decided it was time. I called George, who in reality had never left town. "Final phase," I said simply. "With pleasure, Miss Clara," he replied. 30 minutes later, as the family sat in their dusty, defeated silence, headlights appeared at the entrance. George's truck pulling a trailer with 3 very familiar horses. "Evening, folks," George said, tipping his hat. "Got a call from Ms. Clara, saying y'all might need some help getting these horses back where they belong." It took them a moment to understand. The horses in the trailer were Lightning, Star, and Thunder, which meant that the ones that had been terrorizing them. "Whose horses are in the house?" Peter asked weakly. "Oh, those would be the neighbor's horses, Mr. Wilson. He's training them for a documentary on animal intelligence. Ms. Clara offered to host the experiment this weekend. Didn't she mention it? They're trained to open doors, work with latches, even use human toilets if necessary. Although I see they didn't quite master that last part." The look on Peter's face was worth every cent of the luxury suite. "The capybaras are ours, though," George continued cheerfully. "Well, they're from nature. They come and go. They're kind of unpredictable, honestly." As if in agreement, the male capybara gave one last grunt before leading his family back to the creek. "Ms. Clara will be back tomorrow morning," George said, already leading the training horses onto the trailer. "She asked me to say she hopes you all enjoyed your authentic country experience. Oh, and the power is controlled by an app on her cell phone. She'll turn it back on when she gets home." He left them in the dark, literally and figuratively, with only the mechanical bull and their shattered assumptions for company. I turned to Lucy, who was filming everything for posterity. "One more sunrise," I said. "One more rooster crow, and then I'm going home." "And do you think they learned anything?" she asked. I looked at my son on the screen, still clutching my letter, surrounded by the wreckage of his entitlement. "We're about to find out." Monday morning arrived with what I can only call divine comedy. At exactly 3 o'clock in the morning, the mechanical bull, which Juan had forgotten to mention had an automatic timer, suddenly came to life, complete with flashing lights and loud country music. The music of choice? The relaxed bull. On the infrared cameras, I watched Peter jump out of his makeshift bed on the living room floor. He stumbled outside in his shorts to find one of the capybaras who had returned, trying to ride the mechanical bull. I am not exaggerating. The giant rodent had managed to climb on and was sitting like a furry emperor as the machine swayed gently. "This isn't real," Peter said to no one. "This can't be real." But it was. And when he figured out how to turn the bull off, the cord was under the capybara, who showed no interest in dismounting. The rest of the family gathered on the porch, looking like extras from a post-apocalyptic movie. Matted hair, dirty clothes, empty eyes from lack of sleep. "Is that capybara riding the bull?" Charles asked in a broken whisper. "Nothing surprises me anymore," Rachel replied. She had aged 10 years in 3 days. The rooster alarm went off at 4:30 o'clock in the morning, but this time no one even moved. They were completely defeated. As the sun rose, revealing the total devastation of the weekend, they sat on the porch steps in silence. Even Devil seemed to sense the defeat and simply walked by without attacking anyone. That's when I arrived. I timed my entrance perfectly, stopping my immaculate car exactly as the morning sun hit the mountains. Lucy had done my hair and makeup at the hotel. I wore my best jeans, Anthony's favorite flannel shirt, and the turquoise necklace he had given me for our last anniversary. I looked exactly what I was, a woman in total control of her domain. The family watched me get out of the car as if they were seeing a ghost. "Good morning," I called out cheerfully, grabbing my weekend bag. "How was your authentic country experience?" No one answered. They just stared at me, stunned. I walked past the capybara on the mechanical bull, stepped over the various droppings, and entered my house. Through the open door they could hear me humming as I turned on the coffee maker, the good one I had hidden in the attic. "Mom!" Peter finally managed to speak, following me inside. "Yes, dear? You were in Denver. The Imperial Spa of the Rocky Mountains has an excellent spa. Did you know they have a wonderful hot stone massage? Very relaxing." I picked up my cell phone, and with 3 taps, the power came back on. The air conditioning started humming. The refrigerator started its familiar buzz. "You could control it all the time," he said. It wasn't a question. "I can control a lot of things, Peter. This is my house." The others had crept inside, watching our interaction as if it were live theatre. "The horses weren't yours?" "Yes, Lightning, Star, and Thunder are much better behaved. They're in the stable where they belong. The capybaras will leave eventually, although that one over there seems to have developed a liking for the mechanical bull." "You planned all of it?" I turned to face him fully, channeling every moment of frustration, disappointment, and pain. "No, Peter. You planned all of it. You planned to intimidate me into leaving. You planned to take over my house. You planned to turn our dream, your father's and mine, into some Airbnb investment. You even looked into my finances and consulted with a construction company about lotting the property." Mary gasped. She didn't know about that last part. "How did you know?" "Mr. Miller from the construction company is married to Lucy's sister. Small world, isn't it? He was very interested to hear that you were negotiating the sale of a property that isn't yours." I was trying to help. "No." My voice could have frozen hell. "You were trying to help yourself to your inheritance, as you called it. Tell me, Peter, what did you inherit from your father?" He was silent. "I'll tell you what he left. He left a mother who loves you despite your greed. He left memories you ignored. He left values you rejected. And he left you the opportunity to be a better man than you have been." I took a document from my purse. "This is the deed to the ranch. As you can see, it was transferred to a living trust. You are not a beneficiary. The ranch will be maintained as a working farm and animal sanctuary in perpetuity. When I die, it will be managed by the Olvera family, who actually understand what it means to love the land." Rachel made a choked sound. Peter paled. "You disinherited him," Mary whispered. "I gave him exactly what he gave me. No respect, no consideration, and no claim to what I built." I turned to address the entire group. "You came here uninvited, treating my home like a hotel and me like your employee. You discussed on social media inheriting a ranch before I was even dead. You complained about every aspect of the life that Anthony and I chose while you planned to profit from our work." "This is not," Peter began. "I have recordings, Peter. Every phone call where you discussed my supposed decline. Every conversation with Mary about how to manage me. The group messages where you all made fun of the ranch and called me a stubborn old lady playing at being a farmer. I picked up my tablet, showing them screenshots, their own words, damning and cruel. But what you don't have recorded, I continued, is your father 2 weeks before he died, sitting on that porch, making me promise not to let you destroy this place. He knew what you would become. That broke his heart. But he knew. Peter sank into a chair, the weight of everything, the shame, the recognition, the loss, finally hitting him. I love you, Peter, I said more softly. I will always love you. But love doesn't mean accepting disrespect. It doesn't mean sacrificing my dreams for your greed. And it certainly doesn't mean letting you turn our sanctuary into a commodity. What should we do now? Rachel asked, apparently still missing the point. You should leave. George will be here soon with a tow truck for your cars. The rental company has been notified that you will be returning the vehicles today. Yes, I found the keys. The vultures hid them in the roof eaves. But, Mary began, but nothing. This is my house. You are no longer welcome here. The silence was deafening. Finally, Charles, of all people, spoke. We owe you an apology, Ms. Clara, a sincere one. We're sorry, Helen added in a low voice. This place it's really beautiful. We just couldn't see it. I nodded in acknowledgement, but said nothing. Apologies were just words. Anthony always said to watch what people do, not what they say. It took them 3 hours to pack their bags and clean up the worst of the damage. I supervised, sitting on the porch with my coffee, occasionally giving helpful suggestions. Pig manure needs special cleaner. It's under the sink. Capybara urine is alkaline. It's better to scrub harder. That's not mud in the pool filter. George arrived with his tow truck and a crew. The cars were recovered, minimally cleaned, and made drivable. The capybara on the mechanical bull was, finally, persuaded to dismount with an offering of fresh apples. As they were getting ready to leave, Peter approached me one last time. Mum, I know, I interrupted. You're sorry. You'll do better. You want another chance, right? He nodded miserably. Earn it, I said simply. Not with words, not with grand gestures, with time and genuine change. Your father spent 2 years building this place with his own hands while fighting cancer. You couldn't spend a weekend here without complaining. When you can match his commitment to something other than yourself, call me. How will I know when that happens? You'll know. He hugged me then, awkwardly, briefly. It was the first real emotion he had shown all weekend. They left in a convoy of damaged vehicles and bruised egos. Mary didn't look back. Rachel was already on the phone, probably complaining to her bridge club. The cousins would have a story no one would believe. But Peter looked back once, and in that look I saw something that might have been understanding, or maybe just regret. Time would tell. George helped me let my real horses back into the pasture. Lightning immediately rolled in his favourite dust spot. Star trotted toward the apple tree. Thunder stood at the fence, surveying his kingdom with satisfaction. What a weekend, Ms. Clara, George said, smiling. It was worth every cent of the 5-star hotel and your overtime pay. Anthony would have loved this. He would have, I agreed, although he probably would have used real skunks instead of just skunk spray. We laughed, standing there in the sun, surrounded by the controlled chaos of a working ranch. That night, I sat on the porch with a glass of Anthony's favourite whiskey, watching the sunset paint the mountains purple and gold. The ranch was quiet, except for the usual sounds. Horses whinnying, chickens settling in for the night, the distant croaking of frogs in the creek. My phone vibrated, a text message from Peter. The mechanical bull is still in your yard, I replied with a message. Consider it a monument to authenticity. Then I turned off my phone, raised my glass in a toast to Anthony's memory, and enjoyed the perfect silence of a home defended and a dream preserved. Now, if you liked this story, click subscribe. And tell me in the comments, what part blew you away? Oh, and don't forget to become a member to get access to exclusive videos that I don't post here. I'll see you there.